Good morning, neighbors. We are so excited to bring you the Huntington Matters Election 2024 candidate interviews. This is our coverage we've been doing for 9 years. Every year we want to make sure that you know what your choices are at the polls, so we have a very informal kind of kitchen table type interview with the candidates so you can get to know them, their positions, and their personalities. And this has become a much beloved feature of Huntington Matters. We've already been asked several times over the last few weeks, when are your interviews coming? Everything good? What's going on?
It's in stores.
But it goes into the main feed.
Too.
Also, hold please. Facebook's so fun.
Has.
Let me see.
I don't know how to share it.
Let
Oh,
me
the
see.
bottom one is okay.
Yeah, the bottom one is good. Yeah,
Okay.
she's okay. It's fine.
Good times,
Everything's
guys.
fine. We love Facebook. Anyway, so today we are here meeting Craig. How do you pronounce your last name?
Herskowitz.
Herskowitz.
They had a bit of trouble with
So
it.
no
Yeah,
H.
everyone has. No H.
No H.
Yeah,
Silent H.
a lot of people put the extra H in there, but no.
Yeah, when I was, you want to type it and throw like another letter in there when you're making the graphic. But wonderful to have you.
Thank you for having me.
Thank you so much for coming. He's our first one for the year. So, Craig, why don't you tell us, first of all, what position are you running for?
Yeah, I'm the Democratic nominee for State Senate District 2, which includes the entire township of Huntington and Smithtown.
Excellent. And tell us a little bit about yourself and why you decided to step forward to serve our community as an elected official.
Sure. Yeah, so I was born in Huntington, raised in Northport, graduated Northport Public High School. Went to college at American University in D.C. After college, I went to work for Senator Kennedy on the Hill and then Congressman Steve Israel in his Hop Hog office. And I'm proud to have the endorsement of Congressman Israel in this race.
That's great.
Went to law school at Quinnipiac in Connecticut. Is that right? Spent my summers back on Long Island working for the Suffolk County District Attorney's Office and for a New York Supreme Court Justice. And then after law school, I moved back to D.C.
Okay.
I was an attorney for the FBI and the Department of Justice, prosecuted drug traffickers, terrorists, and money launderers. I led a financial investigation into a terrorist organization and recovered millions of dollars that was used to compensate the victims.
Wow.
And I led the Bernie Madoff victim remission case, which allocated $4.4 billion to the victims. And after 8 years in government in D.C., I moved back to New York to work for J.P. Morgan Chase. And then I was appointed assistant counsel to the governor about 3 months before the pandemic. And I was the chief legal advisor for all financial matters for the state of New York. I oversaw the Department of Tax and Finance, the New York State Insurance Fund, and the Department of Financial Services. And then during COVID, it was all crisis management.
Yeah.
I implemented telehealth, waived copays for the vaccine, and
You did that?
yeah.
Wait, you implemented telehealth. Wow.
So we worked with the Department of Financial Services because we oversaw all the insurance companies.
Right.
So we had to work with the insurance companies to waive the copays, and then we did it by executive order to waive the copays, so people could get the COVID vaccine.
That was when the world was on fire.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Definitely was. The world was on fire, and I definitely had imposter syndrome at the time. Like, am I really the best person to be doing this during the pandemic? But
It's one of those things
yeah.
where they put you in it, and it's like you got to sink or swim. You got to do it.
Yeah, exactly. And then, but that was kind of like my first taste of all of it. I was negotiating with the Senate and the Assembly, and saw how the laws were made. But
Wow.
getting calls at 3 a.m. to make laws, which is like, this is not how we should be making laws.
So you were writing the law, like you were writing the legislation of the law.
So I was working with all the experts that were writing the legislation. I would work with the legislature. We negotiate the legislation, and then I'd recommend to the governor to sign or veto legislation.
Gotcha.
And and then after.
Wow, what a process! We are still learning.
Yeah.
We've been doing this so long, and we're still learning about the civics and how government works and what, it's complicated, but very interesting.
Yeah, definitely complicated. And
So obviously you knew from minute one that when you went into college, if you chose American University, that's definitely a school you go to if you want to go into politics.
yeah, I was definitely committed to public service.
Wow. And what was that impetus? Was that something when you were a child?
Well, my childhood dream was to be a veterinarian, and then I
Shut up! Do you know? You don't know this. I worked for Dix Hills Animal Hospital.
Is that right?
12
Yeah.
years. Yes, it's a wonderful industry. Okay, go ahead.
Yeah, so then I realized I don't like blood. So then I was trying to trying to find a new career choice, and I think I went to like my middle school guidance counselor. I was like, I want to be president of the United States, and she goes, well, if you want to be president, you got to go to law school. I'm like, okay, I'll go to law school.
Wow, that's
and
great.
that's how I really got involved in politics. And then and I loved American University because they took student government really seriously.
Very
like,
seriously.
We could allocate like $1 million to the clubs and organizations. So there was lobbying, there was like backdoor dealing. So it was like a really intense. But like to this day, my best friends are from student government and American. So I mean, I just love that
and
experience.
I had a friend who went there for. If I'm not mistaken, being a diplomat, right? Is that real? Yeah.
Yep.
And he wanted to be in the 80s, oddly, a Russian diplomat. Okay, anyway, back to today. So if elected, what projects or goals are at the top of your list that you want to accomplish?
So one thing that, when I noticed being in the governor's office, we don't get our fair share of funds in Suffolk County.
Amen to that.
And one of the reasons why is we don't have a seat at the table in Albany. Even Ed Romain's like, we can't get funding for Suffolk County because of all the Republican legislators. And so I would be in the majority conference. So I will be able to secure more funding for Suffolk County. And that's kind of my priorities. We get like 50 cents on the dollar. We have extremely high property taxes.
Wow, is that low? It's 50 cents on the dollar. I
yeah,
know
it's
school funding we get a very low percentage. So what this essentially means really quick is that for every dollar in taxes we pay to the state, what we get back invested into our community is half.
Yep.
Because our funds are used to support other communities that may not be as wealthy in the state.
Correct. And then New York State is a donor state as well. So, state funds go to other states.
Yeah.
So it's we're getting bad end of the deal on both ends.
Yeah, gotcha.
So being in the majority conference, working with the Senate Finance Chair, I will be able to bring in more funding for Suffolk County, and so my priority is to identify projects that need more funding and secure that funding.
Gotcha. And when you mean being in the majority Congress, you mean that there's the party that rules the state legislation right now. The dominant party is the Democrat, so that's what you're saying. So it's more challenging for a Republican candidate to navigate those waters.
Right. Yeah. So anything a Republican sponsors dies in committee. They're.
I don't want to say anything.
Right, but I
vote first in that party, just so you know.
Right.
So there's nothing going on.
Well, so the trick in Albany is if you really want a bill passed, a Republican will go to a Democrat and say, "Hey, will you sponsor this for me?"
Yes, you have to work together.
Yeah, you have to work together.
Which is the way it should be, in my opinion. Yeah.
But when you have limited funds that are going around being allocated, it's prioritized. Yeah. Right. So.
Yeah, and it's a fight.
It's a fight. It's a
cat fight.
Right.
And you have to have the Constitution to be able to do that.
Right, exactly.
Or we lose.
Right.
All right, great. So, did we touch on your top goals? Did we cover that?
Yeah. Top goals is bring funding. To Suffolk County.
That's kind of like the core of everything. Right. With funding, you need to do everything else. All right, great. So we were discussing off camera before this. Crime and policing is our next topic, as you guys hopefully all know by this time. That is the core of Huntington Matters. We are a neighborhood watch. We do collaborate and work with our police department, the 2nd Precinct. We live stream the monthly community meetings. We keep an eye on any crime activity. We take tips. We really encourage the neighbors to see something, say something as much as we possibly can. So this next question is truly directly related to that. So the bail and discovery reform legislation, which happened quite a few years ago now, in your opinion, what is going right, and what, if any, changes do you think need to be made to the laws to make our communities safer? So the impetus for this is that before this legislation, we had a very vibrant and powerful neighborhood watch where neighbors were comfortable coming forward and giving tips. Since this legislation with the discovery reform, which we do know discovery was always part of every case and crime. Eventually, this stuff would be handed over to the, the defendant. And but at this point now, it's done so quickly, and personal information is shared in a very fast period of time, even when cases don't end up going to court. So it's making the community much more nervous coming forward with their personal information. So we have been working on a campaign to do anonymous tips, but unfortunately that's not as effective for the police department, but it's something. So that's what I asked. That's the impetus of why I asked. So in your opinion, what is going right, and what, if any, changes do you think need to be made to the laws to make our community safer?
So I was a criminal defense attorney.
You are.
And I was a judge in New York City. I was actually in the governor's office when we were negotiating the bail reform bill.
Yes, this is very difficult. It's a very difficult task.
And honestly, at the time we were like, this bill's going to turn people into Republicans because we thought kind of like we went a little too far, and just the perception of being soft on crime. And Lee Zeldin was very successful running on crime and bail reform, and Democrats got hammered on it. But the thing about bail reform was, well, first off, Democrats put in a fix. So now there's harm on harm. So if someone shoplifts from CVS and they get released, and then they shoplift from CVS again, the judge does have discretion to impose bail.
That's new.
That's new.
That's
a new
change
fix
to it. Yes, which we fully support.
Yes.
100,000 million trillion %.
Right. But the thing with bail, it's just to ensure the return to court, and everyone's innocent until proven guilty.
Right.
And 99% of people show up to court with no issues.
Right.
But you have a lot of people with mental health issues that that are repeat offenders. So I think a lot of the focus needs to be on mental health.
Yes.
We have a lot of money going to prisons, but not a lot of money going to mental health.
I agree completely.
Yeah. So I think focus on treating people. Making sure that they get the treatment and care that they need, would go a long ways to prevent repeat offenders. But I think, there was a lot of misinformation about the bail reform law. I mean, we don't want someone to, spend,
Correct. And I agree with that. I agree with. I mean, I can say what I think is going right, but we're here to hear about you. But let's just say that I agree with that some components are working very well, but there are one or two that I think definitely still need to be changed.
Right. Well, because safety, that's the priority.
Correct.
So, and I think one thing that we need to...
that's what we're challenged
right,
against.
and I think that's what you need to fix in the bail reform law, because like I said, bail is just to ensure the return to court, but community safety should be a factor as well. Because I've seen cases where if someone appears to be a risk to the community, the judge doesn't have that discretion to impose bail. If the person has it's a first time offense and no history, but that the judge should have discretion if they see person's acting erratically in court, and because we want to make sure the community is protected.
Right. Right.
So I think that's kind of the fix that that I'd be looking to change right now.
So specifically, what would that look like? That would look like giving judges more discretion, even more than what was given recently in the update by the governor. Correct?
Right. Yeah. So if the judge sees there's a risk to the community, then they should have that discretion to impose bail.
Right, because the initial round was that the judge can't look at any of their prior offenses. They can't look at the totality of the person's history within the law enforcement community, judges, blah blah blah, if they have prior acts. So now the governor's recent thing, if I'm not mistaken, I'm just refreshing my memory while we're talking, is that now that can be taken into consideration by judges, correct?
Right, yeah.
So the extra step is just a deeper part that you'd like to propose.
Right.
That's great. And while we have you, just in case, if you win, please make e-felonies require bail. Please. Please. Anything that has the word felony should not be no bail. You know what I'm saying? That's my thing. Because we see some of these things going on and we're like,
Well, it really should be discretion of the judge. I mean, I think there are certain e-felonies where you can say, well, this person's not a risk to the community. They're not a flight risk. Because it's a lot cheaper, to not keep, to hold people, in jails.
Kidnapping is an e-felony, right? I mean, we could go on and on.
Right.
Selling drugs on school grounds, right? Isn't that an e-felony? Am I wrong?
Yep.
So they get here's a ticket, come back please, and in the meantime, anyway, we could talk about this on camera.
And then there are certain vehicle violations that are considered e-felonies that maybe not necessarily would require bail, but that's the fine line.
But in the world of legislation, you could literally specify the list of which e-felonies are bail and which
and that's the thing that we were fighting with the legislature when I was at the governor's office. We wanted to include more offenses that were bail eligible, and we got a lot of pushback from the legislator because they didn't want to create more crimes or more bail eligible offenses. So I do think more more crimes.
New York City.
Yeah.
Sorry.
Yes, and that's kind of like the problem. We're
fighting against.
We're fighting
New York
against
City.
New York City.
So they have a ton of bodies, physical representatives because they're so large, right? And they basically are really heavily weighing the whole entire behavior of the whole state, which impacts even the suburban communities, which
Right.
are very different, correct?
Right. Correct.
Am I wrong? Okay,
Correct.
but then there are some things that are legislation specific to the cities, right?
Yep.
Of a certain size.
Right.
So thankfully they get to do that so that us poor peripheral communities don't get dragged along into some bizarre stuff,
Right.
but that's not appropriate for the suburbs. So
Yeah, and that's the problem we're facing is
Right.
Albany is kind of deferring a lot to the city's needs, and then Long Island we're kind of getting neglected. Albany's not
Yes.
really paying much attention to Long Island.
Yes.
And that's why it's important that we have suburban
Meanwhile,
Democrats.
How much of it do we fund? We fund an awful lot of the state, right?
We do.
Suffolk County
We do.
specifically. We
Yeah.
give them a lot of money.
Yes, if Suffolk County were a state, it'd be larger than like 12 states in the United States. So it's we should be our own state. And,
Yeah, I gotcha.
But
That was
yeah,
a whole nother
yeah.
We're hours. Okay, that's question 2. So let's move on. Actually, it's question 3. All right, so great. So we have just so you know, we have 2 similar ongoing issues in our town. They seem minor, but you can just imagine how this ripples out into the community and affects every age. We have vape shops that are illegally selling vapes to minors and selling marijuana, and in the town of Huntington, they're not allowed to sell marijuana. And we have the illicit foot spas that are providing prostitution services and our vehicles for human trafficking with those women that are basically trapped in these work situations. So the police do monthly checks and raids on these establishments. Our neighbors give tips that we actively do this to help, and they use the laws that are currently in place, which unfortunately are not strong enough. So these establishments, literally, they get the vape shops, they get their entire inventory seized. The next day, boom, they're open with a full inventory again. And then same thing with the foot spas. They just shut down and they move to another community, but they're still going. So we need state laws with stricter penalties for these types of places to discourage this activity. So what ideas do you have to address these issues?
Yeah, so I was an asset forfeiture expert for the government, and what's great about asset forfeiture, it takes the profit out of crime. So if you have like a legal dollar and then you mix it with like $10,000 legally obtained, everything can be seized and forfeited. So I think it's extremely important that we take the profit out of these criminal activities by forfeiting all their assets. You can even forfeit, the building as a facilitation of the crime.
And that would discourage property owners from renting to
Correct.
people.
Correct. Yeah.
I'm looking at Dana right now, not you, but no, that's that. I mean, that's quite bold. Yeah, I mean,
we've done that
do you
with
think the
with
city people would go along with that?
Yeah, I mean, we've done that with child pornography when
Yes.
we've seized homes that were used
Yes.
for facilitating child pornography. And also with DWIs, we can start forfeiting and seizing vehicles that were used because it was used in the commission of a crime.
Correct.
Even if it was like, a leased vehicle, it still gets seized and subject to forfeiture. Obviously, the lease company could challenge the forfeiture.
With texting, aren't they?
With texting?
Yeah,
Yeah.
texting and driving. I think they're seizing the cars.
Wow, really?
Yeah. Careful.
Yeah. So
Not that anyone in this room
Nobody does
texts
that.
and drives.
Right.
No, Siri, please do this and that for me. Okay. Wow, that's really interesting. I definitely could get behind that. I like that. Okay, so again, law enforcement, this is, like I said, our big crux is how do you plan to support our community's needs overall in the area of law enforcement?
Yeah, I mean, I think we need to improve the relationship between law enforcement and the community.
Yes.
Like, I love the videos where the police are playing basketball with the children.
Yes.
Like, that's the kind of thing you want to
Try
encourage.
doing that in a bed.
Yeah.
Dragging around 60
Yeah.
pounds with you. It's a feat.
Yeah, and then one of the things that I notice a lot is police are starting to get like de-escalation training,
Yes.
which helps a lot.
Yes.
Because I've seen so many instances that got escalated for no reason, just because police are raising their voice or not handling the situation. But I think being respectful to the community, because I think police, the community needs to start respecting the police as well. I mean, police need to feel safe in doing their jobs, and and so you want to improve that relationship with the community. And And I think, that's kind of a thing that we really need to focus on. That
It honestly is like nobody realizes the power of Neighborhood Watch. We didn't realize it until we did it, right? And the dramatic impact that it can have on an entire community. I mean, when we started, Second Precinct was the second highest crime rate out of the 7 precincts for like decades, right? And then we started our Neighborhood Watch in 2014. 2 years later, we were the second lowest crime rate, and we had no murders for the first time in 11 years. Because of Neighborhood Watch, because it's a small number of people that are committing the majority of the crimes. And you know what they do? We've learned that they flourish in the cracks. And we'll talk about some cracks in a minute.
Yeah.
They flourish in the cracks, and that's where the crime really can take hold, because they look for where the shadows are.
Right.
And then that's where they kind of develop their thing. So you are so correct, because the community has to really work together for effective policing with the police department.
Yeah, absolutely.
I completely agree with that. Okay, great. And by the way, you should take the Suffolk County Police Department Civilian Police Academy.
Okay.
You have to do it.
Okay.
You have to. It's a little bit of a commitment,
It's
but
fantastic.
it is
Yeah.
It's
unbelievable.
amazing.
In just a matter of weeks, you're going to make those connections.
Mhm.
Every person running for
Every person in our community should do it.
they really should. It's really incredible. So you can really understand how the police works. Okay, let's move to health. Opioid and addiction issues is another topic that is very close to all of us. We are all personally affected by that. What is your position on the fentanyl legislative package of bills? You know what that is, right? That was not passed during the last legislative session, and will you vote for it if elected?
Yeah, so I was a narcotics prosecutor. I was in the narcotic and dangerous drugs section of the Department of Justice. So I was prosecuting cases for cocaine and methamphetamines. And, it's a serious issue. And I think a lot of it has to do with the community needs to feel like they can seek the help and treatment. And, we don't want to like punish, people, with addiction. We want to encourage them to, seek out help and support. So I think a lot of my priority is to make sure that resources are available so people can fight these addictions.
Yes.
And
Thankfully, the lawsuits, that helped a lot.
Yeah,
Against
yeah.
drug manufacturers, we have a ton of money now to fund all these things, which is great. But we need those laws.
yeah,
The fentanyl situation is not okay.
No.
It falls in between the penal, right?
Yeah.
Am I right?
Yeah.
I'm saying it right?
Yeah, so,
Okay,
yeah,
this
and-
is- right now the laws are based on weight,
right. Yeah.
right? And fentanyl's so light
Right.
that the equal amount of weight, this can kill 1,000 people versus
Right.
what this can do.
Yeah,
So
and I'm
that's
curious, like, why it didn't get through the legislature.
You should ask your colleagues.
Yeah, so that's why I want to work with the majority leader, and so we can pass meaningful legislation that gets passed. But
Yeah.
because the longer this gets held up, the
Correct.
worse it is.
And regarding xylazine, it is a veterinary medication, and I can tell you that if it becomes a controlled substance, it doesn't matter to the veterinarians. It's literally whatever. We have computer systems that do the whole calculations on the back end, and the reporting, we have to do it anyway. So if you just move it from this category to that category, it means nothing to a veterinarian, and
Right.
it does not bar their access to the drug, just to make that clear. And also xylazine is very dangerous because Narcan does not work on it.
Right.
So it's killing more people. Thank you so much for that. Okay, schools. The Rockefeller Committee is evaluating the foundation aid formula for school funding. You know what that is,
Yep.
right? Okay. This is the formula that the state uses to decide how much of the pie each school district gets. So how will you support our school districts when they decrease our funding?
I mean, well, first, I think that's an outdated metrics that they're using for foundation aid.
Okay.
I don't think schools should lose funding just because there's decrease in enrollment. That just hurts all the
Right.
children. But on Long Island, we really care about our schools. Like I'm a product of public school in Northport, like great education, and and that's one of the reasons why our property taxes are really high, because like if we don't get state aid, we who care about our schools, we make sure it gets the funding.
Right.
So that's, again, my priority is to make sure we get our funding from the state. And that's what we really need to do, is advocate for more funding for our schools.
Yeah.
And that's kind of, that's one of my priorities, because we get more state aid for our schools, that alleviates a lot of the burden from the Long Island taxpayers.
Correct.
And and
And
want
the state gets a chunk from federal, right?
right, yeah.
Okay, got it.
So yeah, so we want our more funds coming in from federal dollars, state dollars. So it's not just all subsidized by our property taxes, and that's really what the fight is about. Is because this is an outdated system metrics that they're using.
It's from like the 50s?
It's like something. Yeah, I don't know the exact. Don't quote me, but it's like it's really an old.
It needs to be revised.
Yeah, it's a very antiquated
It's very
system.
antiquated.
So we need to
That's a problem.
create a whole new formula on how state resources are allocated.
And what is your position regarding the upcoming deadline and mandate for the electrification of school buses? That's a very big expense. How will the districts afford that change?
Well, that's why I want to help secure state funding.
Money.
For the school for the buses, because I think it's a good idea, but maybe not realistic, because we don't want the schools to lose funding or that could be used for the children and for education.
Right. So, you have to
so it really shouldn't be the burden on the schools to come up with the money. It really should be the state that provides this funding.
I agree. And then not only that, then they're going to need the charging stations for the buses too.
Right.
At the bus yards.
Yeah. So I think. This is
One of the school districts, or more than one, owns their own buses, so that's another expense for the schools.
So I think this is a good project that needs to be gradually be phased in, but it really should be the state's burden, not the school's burden, to provide these electric buses.
Very good. Okay. Housing. Our community is in the midst of a housing crisis. This question was this long, and they made me make it like that. Last night, just so you know, it was like 5 hours back and forth. Lots of yelling on the team. No, I want this! No, I want this! Anyway, our community is in the midst of a housing crisis. Affordable. What ideas or plans do you have to address this problem?
So that's a big problem that we have is we spend a lot of money educating our children, and then they can't even afford to live in the communities that they grew up in and they love. So, again, being the tax expert, it's tax credits for development and an affordable project. We just had an affordable housing development right next to the Northport High School that the community's been fighting for 50 years, and it's finally getting built. And it's beautiful.
How do you feel about it? Because personally, I wanted it as soon as I heard about it, and the fact that it had to go to the Supreme Court too was absolutely disgusting.
Yeah, it's a great project. I love it.
It is beautiful.
I love it. Yeah.
And there's a section for differently abled people, which they desperately need. We can talk about that off camera.
Yeah.
Okay.
So that's one big thing.
Credits, and that is the only way that was able to get built.
Yeah.
Right.
And then the other thing is infrastructure. So Prop 2 is on the ballot for the water quality and sewer systems, and I was just surprised how outdated our system is. Yeah.
Sorry,
so I strongly encourage people to support Prop 2. It's on the ballot. It's going to, but once we have a new sewer system on Long Island, that's going to open up more possibilities for affordable housing and more development. So once we have that infrastructure in place, we want to work with a local thoughtful development, smart development, and so it's working with the communities, because a lot of times we always face this NIMBYism with affordable housing, and so I think it's really important to include the community in those discussions so they don't feel like ambushed or blindsided by it. But working with the local governments to identify needs, there's also ideas to transform a lot of these shopping centers, and have commercial on the bottom and residential on the top, which I think is great. And in Melville, they're working on the new town center, which I think is an incredible project. Having these walkable communities with residential and affordable housing.
And my neighbor who lives there can get pizza.
Yeah.
And go to the dry cleaner.
Yeah. So I think
in her own town.
And I think those are great. And I think we definitely need to get rid of the stigmatism that affordable housing is going to be crime, which is all just misinformation and fear tactics. But it's providing housing for the teachers and for our first responders and for our children who graduated school. Workforce. It's workforce housing.
Yes.
So I think
a one-bedroom apartment that's $2,700 to $3,000 a month is not okay.
No, not okay.
It's not tenable.
No.
And the word affordable, the definition, we're going to work with the Congress people when they come. But if you have any say on that, you have to change the word.
Yeah, well, sometimes affordable is not affordable.
Right, it has to, because affordable is a subjective term.
Right.
So they have to update and modernize the word to be, workforce housing.
Right, yep.
Right?
Yep.
Or discounted housing. right? Discounted,
Yeah,
and that doesn't give
yeah.
this horrible thing. Okay.
Yeah, I like workforce housing.
Yeah, I like
Yeah.
that too. And then there's the low income could stay low income.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. Protecting our water quality and environment. Share what you plan to do in this area.
Yeah, I mean, we're a coastal community. I think, water quality is extremely important. We had, some of the best water on Long Island, then we went to the worst water. Because we, having nitrates that are going into the water and, storm runoff. So I think we're turning it around. So we are improving the water quality. But again, that's, the importance of Prop 2 that's on the ballot.
Yeah.
That's going to help improve the water quality.
Right.
But I mean, that's a priority of mine, because we all drink, clean water. But now we have like double filters in our homes, and it's, and there's increased cancer that's on Long Island. So, and that's a priority, is cleaning our water.
All right, great. All right, so how do you plan to address the immigration crisis stressing the state and local resources? This is definitely a state issue.
Yeah, and I mean, the migrant crisis has been like a failure on the federal level.
That's a better term, migrant crisis, not immigration crisis.
And
I'm a migrant. Okay.
and what you have to understand is a lot of these migrants, when they claim asylum, that's legal. So they're not illegal. Most of the people that are in New York illegal are people who overstayed their visas. The problem is, a lot of these migrants who come to work, they can't, because they're precluded, they're not authorized to work while their asylum claims are pending. And we don't have enough judges to adjudicate these asylum claims.
Right.
So we have communities, the farming community, they want the migrants to work. They want to work, and the migrants are good for the economy. Every economist said the United States was going to go into a recession, and we avoided a recession. And a lot of it has to do with all the help that we had from the migrants and the immigration community to boost the economy. But there's also a lot of resentment from Long Island families who are like, I work my 9-to-5 job, pay taxes. Why is my money going to house migrants?
For $500 a night.
Right, and even immigrants in the community, have that resentment. So I think
that's true.
So I think my focus is to make sure that we get our fair share of funds. We need to get more federal dollars to come into New York, because, like I said, New York's a donor state. We're not getting our fair share of funds. This is a failure on the federal level, so we need more federal dollars to come in and focus on our communities and building up our communities.
Are there any state? I don't know this. I'm going to ask it. It might be an ignorant question. Forgive me. Diane's going to make faces because she knows I don't follow this stuff as closely as she would like me to. Are there any states that have basically banned the federal government from importing migrants?
No, I mean, you can't. And so,
so
there's a misconception.
We have but we have a tremendous number,
right? So
compared to other states.
So it's a manufactured crisis where Texas was busing up migrants to New York because they think New York's a sanctuary city. That's it's a made up term. So it's basically what sanctuary city means is, if someone's here, an undocumented immigrant, goes to the police to report a crime, the police don't notify ICE. Basically, it's to ensure that undocumented immigrants feel safe coming out of the shadows.
Okay.
And so it's not like, if someone commits a crime, they'll get deported. But it's like you're not working with ICE to do mass deportations, because you can't. It's unrealistic to do mass deportations.
Right.
That'll destroy the economy. It'll cost trillions of dollars.
Right.
So I do think our system has been overburdened, but
I'm talking about at the state level. Is there anything that we could do? You really can't. You can't make you can't.
Right.
I'm just thinking about it.
Yeah. A lot of it.
Take this many people, and
and
full stay away.
Yeah, and a lot of it's just fear tactics. I mean, just as Zeldin was running on crime, now Republicans are running on the migrant crisis, and it, there's a lot of resentment in that.
It's a sticky situation.
It is a very sticky.
It really is, and just so you know. Sorry to touch
Yeah.
you. I didn't ask
No,
you.
no, no.
Can I touch it while I'm touching you?
I consent. I consent.
I'm touching
I consent.
you. Okay, good.
Yeah.
She's a toucher.
Yeah.
Just so you know, the only Venezuelan gang people, the only one that were arrested in Suffolk County was arrested in Huntington Station.
Mm-hmm.
Do you know that?
Mm-mm.
Okay, so you need to know that. And that is not something that Huntington Station is happy about.
Right, yeah.
So we, this is an issue.
Yeah.
And they're incredibly violent.
Yeah, and I think
it's
that's
incredibly dangerous.
And I think that's the problem, is that we don't really have the system of vetting a lot of the people that are coming in. So more needs to be done to make sure that that it's really just the genuine asylum seekers who want to work and pay taxes and contribute to our economy for a better life. but our system definitely got overburdened.
Right. Can the state petition the federal government, like as a state, and say, "Okay, guys, come on, we're done. We have to fix this." Can you come together and make some kind of a thing? Like
I think that's what what Biden's executive order was. So originally, we're trying to negotiate a bipartisan bill for immigration reform with the Senate, and then Donald Trump killed that bill because he didn't want to give a victory to the Democrats, and he didn't want to solve the problem. He wanted to run on the issue. So Democrats are the only ones actually working to fix the issue. Republicans just want to run on fear tactics and scare tactics. Biden issued an executive order to provide more funding and security for the border, and to limit amount of migrants to come in. That's an illegal executive order. I mean, the courts have already ruled that it's unconstitutional. Because Congress has the power of the purse. The president can't do that unilaterally. But obviously it takes a while to get to the court system, so that executive order is in effect.
And knowing that they're going to get sued for a little while.
And I think that was just the political reality that had to. It's funny, like Republicans kept saying, don't do executive orders, go through Congress, and then this one they were like, well, do an executive order, don't go through Congress. Okay. But I think it's a temporary fix, but we do need comprehensive immigration reform on the federal level.
We do. Yeah. We do. They need. I mean, it's just this kick the can situation. Like forever, there's no pathway to citizenship for a lot of people too, and we have to figure this out. We have to make it work.
Right. And then you have the problem. We have the small handful of gangs that are like and all the migrants get blamed for that, and it's
correct.
But obviously we want to make sure that these violent gang members are.
It's been mafia again. It goes, it's again
But we've done a great job getting rid of MS-13.
Yes, we have. Yes, we did, and yes, that we did get federal help with that at that time, and it was significant, and it made a tremendous difference.
Mm-hmm.
It really did. All right, we have one more question of ours, and then we have the wild card question.
Yep.
So, how do you feel about men playing in women's sports? This has become a very large, major topic of conversation online.
Yeah, and I think that's a lot of fear tactics. I mean, so Proposition 1 is an abortion rights bill.
It's on the back of your ballot.
It's on the back of the ballot. And it's also an equal rights. Basically, it codifies in our Constitution all the rights that we have now. So abortion rights we have now and equal rights that we have now. You can't discriminate against race, religion, color, and that just puts it in the Constitution. The attack,
but the sexual orientation and all that, we have that now as well. Yeah. Not in the Constitution, but in other legislation.
Right. Yeah. In state law, so you can't discriminate against.
You're right about being pregnant, or because these are the specific wordings that are in the Prop 1.
Right. So. Okay. What they
you can't get fired because you're pregnant. You can't.
Right. Yeah. You can't discriminate. You can't get fired. And can't.
Or can't be rejected.
Right. Exactly. Yeah. So it's a protected class.
Okay, got it.
So and every time an abortion rights bill came up to a vote by the public, even in conservative states, the public overwhelmingly supported abortion rights. Mm-hmm. So Republicans are now attacking Prop 1, even in conservative states. So Republicans can't run on abortion because they know it's a losing issue. Mm-hmm. So now they're running on this fear tactic that this bill is going to give rights for men to play women's sports. Men can go into women's locker rooms.
Is that what that means, though? And when you look at Prop 1.
No.
Do you think that is a possibility that can come out of Prop 1?
No.
Where schools can be mandated?
It doesn't change.
No.
Not at all.
We need to answer.
Yeah. It's completely a fear tactic. It's made up. It's to try to demonize a small population that I don't even think it's that of an issue where men are playing women's sports. Even though you can't discriminate based on someone's gender, there's other ways. To limit that. Like if someone has.
So that's the big fear is that Prop 1, as far as I understand, is going to take away the ability for schools to make their own guidelines.
No, it's not true.
It'll overwhelmingly become an overarching thing that everyone in the state would have to adhere to, that anybody can do anything they want at any time, and you can't ever make any programs or laws or procedures about that.
No, it's completely not true. Completely not true. It's just fear tactics, scare tactics to try to motivate, the base.
This question was this long too.
Yeah. And it's horrible that that they're attacking and demonizing a very small group of people, and then the transgender students that are the very few that are in school. I mean, they're using the unisex bathrooms. They're not they're not trying to cause any problems. They're scared. They're nervous.
I think that what this is like. When you do visualize, you see legislation, and then you're like, well, what does this really mean? And you're running it through your head, scenarios. Okay, what about this scenario? How would that work? What about that scenario? How would that work? So this would be, I feel like, one of the, you have this dot that starts here, and then you have the dot all the way out here, and I think, and everything in between. And I feel like this would be the furthest reaching point, right, as far as that goes.
Right.
So it would really, it's relevant because it's everything in between too.
Right. But I didn't play school sports, growing up, but that's because I wasn't good enough to play. I can't say like, oh, it's because I was a man. That's why I'm being discriminated against. There's other factors, and I think if there is I think this is a non-issue.
Right.
But let's just say hypothetically, a transgender man wanted to play, or a transgender woman wanted to play in a women's sport. They can look at like testosterone levels as a way to,
But could they? That's the question.
Yeah,
legally, could they do that?
Yeah, they could,
Despite
because you're not discriminating. There's other factors that could be used. Like if I get fired from a job and I claim to have sex discrimination
right now, looking at testosterone levels, that's not a thing.
Yeah, I mean it's like it's not a thing because it's not coming up. It's not an issue,
right?
But I'm just saying,
But
I mean, there's only like
something.
I mean,
is it possible that there's biological women that would have high testosterone levels that would trigger that? I don't know.
Yeah.
This is all things that
again, it's
our officials have to figure out.
Yeah, and again, I think it really should be up to the communities.
Yeah.
But again, this legislation is not going to preclude a school if the issue ever were to come up. But again, I think it's a non-issue.
Or a sports club.
Right, but it's like
It won't take away those rights.
It won't take away
a sports club or a school or a league to make their own laws, their own rules about the program in their league.
Right, but it's also it's not illegal for like a man, to go into a woman's bathroom or a locker room, but it just doesn't happen. It's like we don't have.
That's our alarm. Thank you. That's our 9-minute alarm. Hey, we're doing pretty good, I think. I think we're doing pretty good. We did spend a lot in the first half. We have one more question left. We have 9 minutes. That's an eternity for me. Okay. Are there any questions or topics that we missed that you would like to discuss?
No, I mean, I just think, I strongly, recommend people supporting Proposition 1 and Proposition 2. Okay. That's on the ballot. Ignore the noise and the fear tactics on Prop 1. I think it's extremely important that we protect our rights in New York from any federal overreach or if...
So we talked a lot about Prop 1.
Yeah.
Prop 2, we didn't mention at all. This was this big on these questions. They told me to cut it. Because it's not really anything that these current candidates have any control over, or any candidates for that matter, because it's just really a public vote of do you want it or don't you want it. So Prop 2 would be, it's a Suffolk County proposition on the back. It would add 1/8% increase to the sales tax, which would put that funds into a dedicated water, help me? I deleted it, so it's not on here anymore. I'm sorry, I threw my pen at you across the room. So it's a water quality fund that can't be, the money can't be taken out of it to use for anything else, correct?
Yep.
Do I have it right?
Yep, and this is actually a non-controversial one.
Right. This is the one that was last year?
Yeah, the Republicans killed it last year because they were afraid it was going to motivate Democrats to come out to vote. So they allowed it this year. Now that with Prop 1.
Was there anything changed in it between last year and
no,
this year? There were some points in the wording that I think were something that they wanted to work out.
No, it was really just they just didn't want it on the ballot during the midterm elections because they thought it would get higher Democratic turnout. We're going to have high Democratic turnout this election. It's a presidential election. It's going to be high turnout on both sides. Democrats historically don't turn out in midterm elections. So I think this is just just political, to be honest with you, and unfortunate because I think it set us back a year. So I was hoping that would pass previously, but we still want to pass it this year.
Right, and then okay. So back to anything else we missed that you want to discuss because I took over your conversation.
No, I think we touched
So
on a
we
lot.
think we did it.
We did good. Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
I like it.
I feel good.
All right. So early voting begins. Diane.
October 26th.
Saturday, October 26th. She's our producer. And where do we vote? Early voting around here is Dix Hills Fire Department still?
Yes.
Mm-hmm.
That's
Train
it.
station.
Oh, and the Huntington Station Library? Huntington
And
Station
there's
Library.
another one.
There's another one.
Diane will post it later.
Show
There's
that-
one in
we
Green Lawn,
have
I
it.
think.
And it'll be on our calendar
And the
very
times
shortly.
there, the times vary, but that'll be on our website also. On
The
our
times
everything.
vary.
Oh, the times
Yeah.
vary of when you
No
can
voting
go.
the day before the election.
No, wait, right. So election day is
November 5th.
November 5th. And it is the most important thing in the whole wide world to vote for your local candidates. Don't only come and vote for president. You have to vote for your local candidates because they have the most impact on our daily life. As you can see, schools, police, the infrastructure, the sewers, development, that's all determined locally. So we hope that you enjoyed this video and that you got to know Craig. And if this is a good fit for you and your family, then definitely get out and vote. What? 5.
Green Lawn Fire Department.
Green Lawn Fire Department is the other location for early voting. Thank you guys so much for joining us. We will be back again tomorrow at 10 a.m. with Assemblyman Keith Brown. And we're going to be doing our interview with him. And then we'll have another one later in the day tomorrow as well. So stay tuned and thanks for watching.